Hey everybody, Max here. Welcome to Coffee with Max. I'm your host, Coffee, and I hope you enjoy. The more instruments that you learn, the better you get at all the other instruments, and the faster it is you can learn the other instruments. So, for example, I started on drum set, and I had messed around with piano before then a little bit, but I didn't really play piano. I started really getting into drums probably when I was about 10. I started taking lessons and practicing seriously. And I played drums for a very long time. And the skills that you learn when you learn drums include coordination, hand-eye coordination, two different things, limb coordination, hand-eye coordination, your sense of time, rhythm, a bunch of really valuable skills that you get just from playing the drums. The next instrument that I started messing around with was piano. I took a couple piano lessons and sort of ran with that. And it was kind of an amazing thing because all of the skills that I had learned from drumming didn't just stay with drumming. And in fact, they spread out to my everyday life besides other instruments, which I'll talk about. But when I learned piano, all of my drumming skills kind of came over into piano. And when it was typical for people to have to learn, left and right coordination with their hands, that was easy for me because I had already learned left-right coordination as well as my feet. And that was from drumming only, so that made it a lot easier. So I want to talk about that a little bit, but mostly I want to talk about why it's so beneficial to learn other instruments. And I think you gain a lot from it. So learning the drums made it easier to learn piano, and learning piano, I got really good at understanding music theory, which in turn helped me understand the guitar better, because the guitar is, I think, really hard to learn and understand music theory on because of how the strings are laid out. On a piano, everything is just laid out from low to high. On a guitar, the strings go up and fourths, and then there's 1/3 there. It's just kind of confusing. You have notes that are the same note in different spots, so it's hard to understand music theory. And I think I could have learned guitar without the drums and piano experience, but I think that learning it with those made it so much easier because that coordination was already in place, and the music theory I understood very well already. So you can see why it would be helpful to learn one instrument first and then move on to the next instrument, move on to the next instrument. And I do think that your prior instrumental experience will help you a lot in learning the new instruments. I also want to talk about the other side of it, which is backwards, which is learning a new instrument will help you get better at your primary instrument. So I'm going to use drums as an example because that's my primary instrument. That's what I started on. That's what I've played the most. And I never really learned how to groove, how to get into a pocket with a bass player until I played bass myself with a drummer. It was a really interesting experience. It opened my eyes to a lot of things. I played bass a little bit. It was easier than guitar for me at first because there's fewer strings and it was more rhythmic. And so I learned, a couple little grooves on bass. And I had a friend come over and we jammed, and it was night and day. I was sitting there playing the bass and hearing my friend play, and it was, oh man, I really want him to do this, 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 and this. And they're all things I had never thought of being a drummer in that position. It was really interesting. And some of those things were, things that you hear as a drummer, but you don't quite understand until you've been on the other side of it. So it was, play with the backbeat really strong, show me where the backbeat is. Don't worry about my ears so much. I just want to feel the backbeat. I need things really locked in and tight, and I can hear as a bass player when the drummer seemed to be either sticking too much to the beat, to the tempo, or pulling it back a little bit. And that was really frustrating as a bass player. So it was a really, really interesting experience because I would be playing a groove, the drummer would be kind of slowing down or not going quite where I wanted to go, and I understood instantly why bass players and guitar players get so frustrated when a drummer is pulling back a little bit. And this is a little side note, but not to say that the drummers are necessarily dragging or out of time, but if the song wants to pull a little bit, and the bass player and the guitar player feels it, and the piano player feels it, and the singer feels it, and the drummer is like, nope, I'm going to stay right here in this pocket that I designated as the pocket that I'm going to stay in, then I understand that frustration from the other instrumentalists. So anyway, that's one example. Learning bass really helped me understand how to groove on drums, which is interesting. And then recently I've been learning how to play the cornet. If you don't know what a cornet is, it's basically a trumpet. It's slightly different shape and has, I think, just a slightly more mellow, warm tone. Really beautiful instrument. And so up to this point, before I learned the cornet, I had played drums, which is, short note, no sustain, just transients. You hit the note and it is the note. Guitar, bass, piano, keyboard, and all of those instruments are things that you choose a note, you fret it or you play it, and that note is that note. And that's just kind of how I had played music for as many years as I had. And then I started learning trumpet maybe a few weeks ago, and it's been an amazing experience because that C, that middle C or B flat on a trumpet, you play it on a piano, it just happens. You play it on a bass, and find the note and you play it on a bass, it just happens. On a cornet, you have to work for that note, and it was really interesting because I started to develop a relationship with each of these new notes that I was learning from a different perspective. And it's kind of indescribable because it totally shaped how I see melody and how I see notes. It's not just to play something on keyboard, bop, 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 like that. It's just a little bit of mechanics in your hand. To play that on trumpet, it takes a different speed of breath. It takes change in embouchure to get all those different notes to come out cleanly. And so it just gave me so much more respect to phrasing of notes. It gave me more respect to wind players in general. And especially your articulation is really incredible. And I had never really respected articulation or understood articulation, how you're going to express a group of notes, until I played the trumpet, because it's so easy to get so many different articulations. You can say the same thing a million different ways. And so that's been really amazing. So anyway, to sum things up, there's two sides of this, and either way, I would recommend learning as many instruments as you can. Choose your one or maybe two primary instruments that you just resonate the most with, but absolutely branch out. Take some vocal lessons. Take some guitar lessons if you've never played guitar. If you're a guitarist, learn to play the drums. You might find that your coordination shoots through the roof. If you're a bass player, try to play a wind instrument so that you understand phrasing and expression a little bit differently. I really think it's helpful, and you'll find that your previous instruments experience, learning that instrument, that experience that you gain from that will cross over into learning any other instrument that you choose. Anyway, this has been Coffee with Max, episode 3. If you liked it, let me know. If you didn't, you can keep that right to yourself. But if you have any topics for future videos, please let me know. And have a great day. Enjoy your coffee.